2, 1, you're live.
Okay, great. We're live.
Yeah.
Okay. A very, very warm welcome to everyone watching at home. Welcome here to the London Buddhist Centre. My name is Max, and this is, for people that don't know, Dianatha and Amelie Yodin. And what we're doing this evening is, this is a chance to meet the two new Mitra conveners. So Dianatha and Amelie Yodin have just taken over the role, I believe 2 weeks ago, is it? Something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually welcomed 7 new Mitras, 7 new men into the Sangha here on Dharma Day, which was a couple of Sundays ago. So we thought this would be a really good chance to sort of, get to know these two men a little bit more. And so I'm a Mitra, it's probably worth saying. I live upstairs, and so the thinking was that it'd be good for a Mitra to sort of interview the both of you. To grill you, interrogate you a little bit more, exactly. And Dianatha and Amelie Yodin both live upstairs in the same community, which is why they're not social distancing, so no need to worry about that. And we've got Seb as well from Samagavasa. Are you free, Seb, to come and give us a wave?
Yeah,
good.
Yeah, okay.
So Seb also lives with these two. He's volunteered to do our tech for us. So. Okay, good. So I thought I'd start by just saying a word or two to introduce Dianatha and Amelie Yodin. And I think the first thing to say is that I've already mentioned they both live together. And they both share a preceptor. So a preceptor is someone that that privately ordains you into the order, and they give you your name and your sadhana. So both of these men were ordained by Paramabandhu, who's a very, very influential and well-respected figure here at the London Buddhist Centre, a good friend of mine as well. So they're both, as it were, disciples of Paramabandhu, and there's something very, very lovely about the fact that you're both now taking on this role together. They also share a room upstairs in community, so I imagine you're very, very close through that as well. So there's sort of lots of connections that have formed between you both, and how lovely it is that then they're doing this job together. Because we'll probably get onto it in the interview, but it's the first time that you've that this role has been split between two people, isn't it? I've liked getting to know you both over the past couple of years. I mean, you've both led retreats that I've been on, one in Gyaloka in Spain, Dianatha, and another one in Vajrasana with you, Amelie Yodin. And you've both led courses that I've been to, and it's been really lovely being around two relatively new order members and watching them teach loads, because what I've been able to see from both of you is just quite how quickly you've grown, quite how quickly you've grown in substance and stature and depth, both publicly in the way that you teach, and also privately, when we've met up and when I've got to know you a bit more through working with you on retreats and things. So I've been really, really impressed by how quickly you've both been growing. And really quickly, just to say their names, both have meaning. So Dianatha's name means he who is the Lord of kindness. And I've certainly noticed that from you, Dianatha. I think the Lord part of your name shows how well you can lead, and you lead a Mitra group, and you led this retreat that I was on, and you've got a very, very natural capacity to lead and to want. I definitely want to follow you when you're leading things, and that's always imbued with a very, very kind nature. And Amelie Yodin's name means he who is a warrior, whose aim is purity. And there's something about strength and purity and strength and clarity that I definitely associate with you, Amelie Yodin. I remember being on a retreat with you, and you introduced puja to people, which is a Buddhist ritual, in a very, very strong way, a very, very unapologetic way. It's quite can be seen as quite an intimidating thing, puja, and you sort of introduced it so clearly and unapologetically. And I think there's definitely something about your name that I can see why it was given to you, basically. So welcome both of you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think I'd like to start off just by getting to know you two a bit more. So perhaps Amelie Yodin, can we start with you? And could I just So, you know, what brought you to the Dharma? Because you were a cage fighter before, yes?
I was, yeah. I had a spotted and somewhat kind of windy route to the Dharma, I would say. And I mean, cage fighting has been in cage fighting. MMA fighters will be very annoyed in the profession. It's called MMA, so mixed martial arts. It's usually, but people do call it cage fighting, so it's fine. It does happen in cages, so it's fighting. So I used to be a mixed martial artist way back in the day. I've hung up those gloves well and truly now. But I think partially what's attracted me to that and what was similar with the Dharma is the sense of brotherhood that I got from it, actually. I grew up in a house of two younger brothers. I have my two younger brothers, Pete and Nick, so we had this, this brotherhood growing up, and we were close in age, 1 or 2 years of close in age. And so we had this brotherhood. And then when I started fighting, it was very much brotherhood as well, overwhelmingly men that used to train and fight with. So when I came into Triratna and the men's community in Triratna in particular, and then obviously now with the order very much, it's been an initiation into a brotherhood each time. And I think I recognized that when I first stepped into the doors, first introduced to the Dublin Buddhist Centre. I learned to meditate there and found the Dharma there eventually as well. And I immediately recognized brotherhood, and it was such a strong thing for me. I think it's a thing I've had in my whole life. So I recognized it and liked it. And I mean, my route to the Dharma was slightly windier than that. Actually, I spent some time in the Palestinian territories in the Middle East. And after I came back from a year there, having had my fill of sort of conflict and watching the trauma of other people from that, the trauma of conflict for other people from that, I found myself slightly sort of adrift, particularly coming back into a culture that was so different from the one I'd been in. I'd been in Gaza for 3 months. And so I think I was looking for something very much to sort of reorientate my life again at that point and make sense also of what I'd seen as well. Somehow that intuitively felt like the Dharma for me, I think. So that was ultimately my road to it, yeah.
Wow, thanks. That's sort of very interesting route in. I mean, everyone's just so specific, aren't they?
Yeah, that's right.
Good to hear from you a bit about yours.
Yeah.
And a very similar question for you, Dianatha. Well, we've heard, a bit from Emily Oden about seeing people suffering and then coming into the Dharma through that. And I guess you see that on a daily basis with your work as a GP, as a doctor. So perhaps you could talk a bit about that and then how you've then come into Buddhism.
Okay, yeah, well, I can start off with how I've come into Buddhism and then talk a bit about where I am now. But interestingly, I think we've got quite similar stories, actually, because I'm also the oldest brother. I've got two younger brothers as well. And also when I was 18, I went to Israel to not go on the Israeli side to try and again help the peace process and sort of see, try and get meaning, if you see what I mean, in life, see if you can sort of help the situation. I mean, I don't think I really managed it, but definitely when I was out there, I got that sense of community. Living on kibbutz, where it's a sort of agricultural community and an ideal, a purpose in life. And when I came back to university after that time in the Middle East, I was left feeling quite empty. Just sort of with the standard university, like the drinking culture and sort of trying to get the sort of top job and money, and it just didn't fit with this experience of trying to look for meaning in the world. At the same time, after my first degree, I then applied for medicine to be a doctor because I thought I'd get that meaning, through being a doctor. And I was also quite anxious at the time, and I thought that meditation would help. So I went along to the Buddhist Centre, learnt meditation, and not only did I really love the meditation, find it helpful, but I found that there was meaning there in the Buddhist Centre. And so I just sort of, once I got into medicine, studied in London, I thought I've got to keep coming to the Buddhist Centre, even though I'm trained to be a doctor. Even that wasn't enough meaning in the end, just because you need a context where you can really look at your mind through meditation, where you have that community and brotherhood you're talking about, friendship, and a context where you can really look at life, like the existential problem of life, and go beyond that. So, even medicine wasn't enough, so I came here and got more involved. If that's
that's great. That's a really, really full answer to it. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And so perhaps you could just talk a little bit about that balance then between now you still work as a doctor and you're very, very engaged in the centre, and what's that like, holding those two things, as it were?
Yes, yeah. So we both do. So as I say, we're sharing the job, Mitra job, and we both do actually a second job. So Odin does fundraising as well. You might be asking about that, and I do a few days a week. Well, actually, it's going to be a few days a week working as a GP. So in a way, it's still meeting people. It's either way, it's meeting people, trying to help people. I feel I do need a balance though. I wouldn't want to just be doing GP full time, because I feel like ultimately the Dharma is the most important thing people can learn. People can pick up for a life free of suffering and a life full of meaning. So I sort of enjoy that balance of being able to use my skills, because I have got skills being a GP, so that helps people, but also share the Dharma with people. For the rest of the week. So that's a good balance for me.
Yeah, sounds like a really full schedule.
It is quite full work. So that's one of the problems with it. I have to go on lots of retreats. to recover.
And as Dianatha touched on, your fundraiser here at the RBC, aren't you? And am I right to say you sort of took the initiative with the role, didn't you, and sort of proposed the role and then stepped into it, as it were?
Well, I was sort of unemployed, Max. So I sort of thought, go on, give us a job. So I put myself forward for that, and I have some experience. I worked for the Karana Trust as a fundraiser as well, which is a Tree Ratna team-based right livelihood based in India and Nepal. So I have a bit of experience in that background. Not that I was characteristically suited for the role whatsoever. I mean, my old employer will tell you the first 2 years fundraising at Karana was an absolute disaster. But it did come together. So that's what I do as well here at the centre. And I think, to a large extent, fundraising is about being friendly and approachable, outgoing, reaching out to people, which, again, is much like what you do in a Mitra convening role. Really, my thoughts on fundraising are you're friendly and relatively confident and relatively professional. And, you're happy to sort of put yourself out there and ask for money, and ultimately it sort of comes out of that. So, I think that's what we do as Mitra conveners. We put ourselves out there and reach out to people, and we're friendly, and I think so to some extent that there's some crossover there as well.
Great. So I was going to ask you both a little bit more about what a Mitra convener is, but before we move on to that, I sort of wanted to unpack what a Mitra is for people out there that might not be completely aware of what the term means. So perhaps Emily Odin, whilst we're with you, could you just sort of outline what it means to become a Mitra? So sort of what a Mitra is, and what actually becoming one. What does that mean?
Right. Yeah. Well, it's interesting. We had our first sort of 7 men become Mitras last week, and 3 women and 7 men. We sort of oversaw the 7 men and helped prepare them. And, talking to them in the last week or so, it's been interesting because all of them have had a sort of, an experience around the ceremony and the ritual of becoming a Mitra that they can't quite put their fingers on as to what it is that it's done. So I think probably when we talk about becoming a Mitra, the first thing you have to say is that in itself is a complete mystery. To become a Mitra on a sort of formal basis is to say that I'm a Buddhist. I'm practicing the basic 5 ethical precepts, the 5 precepts that the Buddha gave to lay people, and I'm doing this in Tree Ratna as a home. So that's the formal basis. So that's the sort of what's said in the ceremony. But I think ultimately the ceremony actually and what happens when you become a Mitra is a bit of a mystery. I've always found that about becoming a Mitra, and that even indeed about becoming an order member, there's something that happens within the ritual that is above and beyond and transcends the ritual. The ritual is the sort of gateway into something that is a sort of magical first step on what can be a really amazing journey into deepening our human potential. It's sort of archetypal in that sense, if you know what I mean. So I could talk about the ceremony and the ritual, but I think actually what really happens is something beyond being able to sort of talk about to a certain extent. There's a little bit of magic to it as well. So I think important to sort of leave that open to people as well, that if they felt themselves ready to take that step, dive into that sort of the adventure of that, and not say too much about it as well. I think,
great. And perhaps bring you in, Dianatha, as well, and sort of on this sort of topic in general of, I mean, you were touching on it a little bit ritually, and you mark it ritually when you become a Mitra as part of a ritual, normally on like a full day here at the Buddhist Center, isn't it? Like Dharma Day, Buddha Day, Sangha Day, and perhaps you could talk a bit more, Dianatha, about the significance of marking something with a ritual. Why is it that we ritualize it as opposed to merely marking it, between us?
Well, we use ritual in life, don't we, for special occasions that are important to us, really to help us remember. For example, when you help us remember and to help us celebrate something special. For example, when you graduate from university, you might have a graduation ceremony, or you get married, you have a wedding ceremony. So it's just part of human culture to mark significant events with a ritual. And as I say, not only is it to help celebrate, but it's to help remember what we've done. So I think that remembering is really important, because practicing Buddhism and the Dharma is hard. It's hard to sometimes remember to do it, to meditate, to come to the center, to go on retreat. So by becoming a Mitra and doing the ritual, somehow there's this sort of, it helps us, as I remember who we are, what we want to do. So that gives us a sort of basis then to make the next step in practice, as well as that mysterious element that we really was talking about. We just don't know, something happens when you take a step. It's like something, you take a step into the unknown, and then something happens and you carry on.
Interesting as well, isn't it, that I think what happens with that is that because it's also public, isn't it, this ritual, it's not just a private ceremony, and it's not just for ourselves. We also do it for, and as witnessed by the people around us, which gives it a sort of sense of potency as well. I think there's something about how the universe responds to that kind of public declaration. When I say the universe responds, I mean it kind of looks to meet it. The Buddhas and Bodhisattvas almost look to meet it. They reach out to meet you as well when you make a declaration of that sort of thing. And I think that's part of the mystery of what it is that happens. I certainly didn't know, I don't know about Diana, but I certainly didn't know what I was doing, I think, when I became a Mitra. I don't think I knew what I was doing when I became an order member. That sort of seemed to unfold for me a bit afterwards, but part of it seemed to be that the universe seemed to reach out to me, and the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas seemed to reach out to me in the doing that as well. There's something about the publicness of that, I think, that really helped it. So,
and just off the back of that, one thing I wanted to touch on was you mentioned these three sort of statements that you make, and the third one, just speaking personally, which is that you're going to practice within this tradition. You're making a commitment to this particular tradition for your practice. That's the one I felt quite, reticent about or something. Or I was sort of happy to say I was a Buddhist, and the 5 precepts, and you can't really argue with that much. They're good to practice, but there was something about that committing to a tradition or something, and I think there is something about that being public, and you being witnessed by a tradition. Maybe you could say a bit more about what it means to commit to a tradition and why that is beneficial.
I mean, Bante Sangharaj, the man who founded Triratna, used to have this great metaphor of digging one big well as opposed to lots of little small ones. And I think ultimately, to go deeper, in that sense, to extend that metaphor, to go deeper, you have to go narrow. You have to narrow down into a particular path. You have to take a particular path. It's not like we can start 30 different ones, and then hope to get in the same sort of place as if we picked one and sort of gone deep with it, gone narrow but deep, if you know what I mean. There's this great story from the Zen tradition. People have possibly heard it, but I'll tell it. And these two monks go out and they look to, they're both looking to dedicate themselves to the Dharma life, the Buddhist life. And so they arrive at this monastery and they're accepted, and each of them spends a year. One of them stays. He says he decides he wants to stay at the monastery and continue practicing. The other one goes and continues to wander. And each year he moves on from monastery to monastery to monastery. And at the end of 30 years, he comes back to his friend, who's still in the same monastery. And he says to him, where have you been? In the 30 years you've been here all this time, whereas I've been to 30 different monasteries in the time that you've been here. And the monk who has stayed responds to him and says, yes, that's true, but I have been practicing for 30 years and you've just been practicing for one. Which I thought was a nice sort of little story, is the kind of, I think, what happens when we do kind of thin ourselves out over lots of different paths. And what we do is we just don't make it as much progress as we would. So.
And perhaps I could bring you in here, Dianatha, with if we are going to commit to this particular tradition within Triratna, there's so many traditions out there, particularly in London. What is it about becoming a Mitra or a friend to this movement and practicing within this movement that is particular to, what is it that Triratna particularly has to offer?
Well, I think the clue is in the title itself. We're Mitra conveners, you're a Mitra. Mitra means friend, of course. And the Buddha did say that when Ananda, his attendant, asked him, how is spiritual friendship important? How important is it? Is it 50% important? Is it 60%? The Buddha said, no, it's the whole of the spiritual path. It's 100%. And that's because without friendship, you can't go deeper, I don't think, because you need friends to help keep you on the path, but also to show you bits of yourself that you can't see. Without those bits, you can't grow. So that's what I think what Triratna offers. Other Buddhist movements, of course, also offer friendship, but we have a particular emphasis on spiritual friendship. And that's why we live in community. That's why we work. We don't get paid for being Mitra conveners. We work on supports or allowances. So the whole community is about friendship, giving, and through that it just becomes very enjoyable. So I'm emotionally engaged, and I want to commit to this path. I want to go on retreat. I want to practice. I don't mind sharing a room, even if we're in bunk beds and we're 35, because none of that even matters anymore.
Sometimes we might.
Sometimes. But ultimately, I was talking about this on Sunday in our chapter, how wonderful it is just to have that level of friendship that I just wouldn't have got otherwise. So and to share that with other people that want to join the Mitra is wonderful. To see their friendships grow as well.
Something I think I've always liked about myself and Dianatha's friendship, as we sort of introduced at the start, we've had a past where we've sort of lived and been amongst two separating lines of a very bitter conflict, haven't we? Obviously being the Israel-Palestinian conflict, but our friendship has transcended that, hasn't it? I think it represents the transcending capacity and ability of friendship, actually, in which Triratna holds so dearly, and Bhante has kind of put forward so strongly as well. So.
That's true.
Brilliant.
Thanks, Gertrude.
Brilliant. Okay, that's sort of a really good exploration of sort of or introduction as to what a Mitra is. Thanks a lot for that. I feel like I covered quite a bit of ground. I wanted to move on to sort of a bit more specifically what your role is. That the term Mitra convener might seem quite it's definitely a new one to some people. I looked up the definition of convener. Shall I share it with you?
Because I actually don't know.
So I probably have a sense. Maybe I'll quiz you. You could try. I'll just give it. It says a person whose job it is to call people together for meetings of a committee. A person whose job it is to call people together for meetings of a committee. So perhaps, so you're doing that.
It's not the most inspiring.
No, it's not. It's a bit dull.
Yeah. Convene is good though, isn't it? Because convene means you're bringing people together. So that's more it, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're bringing this. It's like you're bringing the Sangha together and helping the Sangha grow, whether that's new people coming in or just once people are Mitras, you sort of are still supporting them.
So the question is what
the question is like what do you see your role as a Mitra convener as? Like, what is a Mitra convener, and how do you two? It's a question for both of you, I guess. How do you sort of think about that?
I mean, I think for me, it's just about reaching out that hand of friendship to people. I think really friendship is at the engine room here of the LBC, to use that certain particular metaphor. It's what keeps the thing moving. It's what's the energy behind the center here. It's all based on friendship. And so for me, I think the Mitra convener role is about representing that as best as we possibly can, and looking to kind of be that point of connection for men coming into the center, so that any man coming into the center has somebody that they can go to that will reach out to them with that vision of community, with that vision of Sangha, and that vision of friendship. And it's so important now. I mean, look at the crisis of friendship, I would say, in the UK at the moment, particularly the crisis of men's friendship at the moment. I mean, I think there's a reason why it's overwhelmingly men taking their lives, and it's because there is a crisis of friendship, of loneliness and meaninglessness in men's lives at the moment. And I think men are crying out for it. So, I think I see one of our roles, a part of our role here at the centre, of just looking to offer that to men, whoever they are, whatever their background is when they come into the centre.
Anything you'd like to add, Daniel?
Yeah, I think that's sounds very great. I feel the same.
Good. I touched on it briefly, and so I just wanted to ask it a bit more formally. But historically, the role has always been fulfilled by one person, and I wondered how did it come about that there's two of you doing the role, and what does that mean for the role? Is it going to be different? Is it going to be handled differently? Sort of.
Yeah. Well, everything we try and do here at the centre, we try and do it in teams. So there's never, when we teach classes, it's never just one teacher teaching the class. It's always a team of teachers. There's the whole centre is run by a council with Sri Gupta chairing the council, and the women's side have had two Mitra conveners working as a team for a while. So when Jayika, who'd been doing it for 11 years, stepped down, there's an opportunity for sort of a new vision for Mitra convening, and the fact that we both wanted to do it, it's just the circumstances really. We both wanted to do it. We both, were up for it, and the centre was happy. There's a lot. Also, it's fantastic. The centre, so many people come through the door. So that means there are a lot of men who are interested in becoming a Mitra, interested in taking their practice deeper. So there's definitely means now we've got more capacity to help men who want to do it. So the centre are very happy to have both of us, and that means we can now work in a team. Had a meeting today. Very good. So looking at new systems and all sorts. It's really exciting. But we sort of work well together. We sort of complement each other, different qualities, and throw ideas around and see what sticks. That's where I really enjoy that sort of working with working with someone else who's got the same values. No,
I think that's right. That really covers it quite well.
Great. I'll put the next question to you, Amelia. Sure. You used this word down after vision, and I wondered if you two had any particular vision for the role. Not necessarily that it needs changing, but sort of as you've inherited the role, is there anything that you've talked about between yourselves as like a vision for it? Is there anything that springs to mind with that?
Oh, good question. I mean, I think our vision. mean, I think the vision for Jayaka has done a phenomenal job. The Mitra
Yeah.
convener, the men's Mitra convener, who's just gone out, has done an absolutely phenomenal job in the role over the last 11 years, served massively. I mean, I think our vision is Bante's vision, isn't it? Bante Sangharaj's vision. It's of a thriving Sangha, in our particular instance, a thriving men's Sangha here at the LBC. You know, in which people can commit their lives. I think that's the thing actually that we want to be able to do here at the centre, is that a man walks into the centre and goes, and through our reaching out to him, goes, I can commit my whole life, I can put my whole life into what the centre offers. I don't have to if I don't want to, but I can if I want to. It offers a place whereby I can unfold completely in all my potential as a human being, right up to a vision of, liberated enlightenment that the Buddha found. So I think that's really important for us. Actually, it's that a place that you can give as much as yourself as you want to, and that actually it will give back that as well. However much you want to give, it will give back that as well. There's men here that live here, that work here, that give their evenings over here to teaching, to all of those sorts of things. So that being a sort of open community where people can step into, that it's not closed or private, but it goes out to anybody whatsoever. And I think that was Bante's vision for it, and I think that's really what we'd want to hold up.
Do you have anything you want to Okay. Just one more question on this topic, which is for you, Dan Arthur. You were talking earlier about, I think you mentioned on the Odin about it giving people a sense of meaning, so people experience loneliness and meaninglessness. I've certainly experienced that coming along to the centre and developing, well, a real sense that my life's imbued with meaning. And not that it wasn't before. It's almost like I realise the meaning that is there in my life, and I've seen that happen to so many other young people, particularly the young men in my Mitra group. Just because I know them so well, and the young men that I live with. And I wondered what your thoughts were on what why it is that people come along to the Dharma, and if you commit and engage, it does open up meaning in your life. What sort of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. It's a good question. I mean, well, just in brief, it's a quite a big question. Well, in brief, the Dharma recognises the fundamental problem of life, which is that life is, at its core, unsatisfactory as we know it. So it never quite sort of bites to the core. You can't quite become satisfied from the usual, making money, having a career, relationship, etc. Not that you can't have any of the things, but they're just never really satisfying. How can they? Because everything changes all the time, and nothing, because everything changes, nothing substantial, so nothing's fixed, including even ourselves, of course. And that sort of means that unless we address those facts in a way, we're never going to get meaning. So what Buddhism does is it addresses those facts. So it's in a way the opposite of burying your head in the sand. People often say the Dharma is, or you're just meditating, burying your head in the sand. It's actually the opposite. You're sort of looking on purpose at the fact that, yes, of course, there's pleasure in life, but life is unsatisfactory, and everything's changing all the time as well. And the Buddha then offers a vision, a way out of that sort of potential problem, or that problem of unsatisfactoriness and impermanence, and says, no, look, if you see that more clearly, that's the way out. You can get a new type of consciousness that we don't even know about. I mean, I don't even know what it is, but I know I believe it's possible to have a new type of consciousness that can comprehend that, and in a way, that's the ultimate meaning for me. And I think people get tastes of that when they come. They might not the full that, but as soon as you're in a Mitra group where you can run the centre, you get a taste of that, because the more you're aware of that, of course, the more calm you are, the kinder you are, the more personal you are, the more you're yourself, in a funny way. So people want to be around that. People want to be around other people that are genuinely looking at those big issues in life and finding a way out. it's very conducive to friendship and just a genuine community.
Brilliant. You said good answer. I thought it was a great answer. Anything you want to add on the edit?
Well, I think it's right, isn't it? People need meaning. You can't have a human life without meaning, and we'll put one, even unbeknownst to us, we'll put one at the center of our lives. And often so many of the meanings that are sold to us are lemons. You know, they don't do what they say they do on the tin. So the meanings that are sold to us are hedonism or status or consumerism or whatever it might be, and of course they let us down, don't they? They don't do the things that they say they're going to do. And I think I had a couple of different tries, possibly as yourself, Max, in terms of finding meanings in places that weren't going to give it to me. Totally blessed that I came across the Dharma and found a meaning that would give back to me, that was reliable ultimately at the end. So,
Brilliant. Very good. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to touch briefly and weave these two areas together, because we started off with a bit more about your personal lives, and then we touched on what it is to be a Mitra. And I just wanted to hear very briefly from you both about your own Mitra ceremonies. Do you have any memories of those, and what did it mean to you to become a Mitra? For both of you, either can go.
Shall I?
Yeah.
I do. I remember mine quite fondly. I mean, for me, it was a big decision at the time. I was it was a point in my life where I could have taken one direction, basically, but I decided to take another direction to sort of to get more involved in Buddhism. And so it was sort of it felt like a big step at the time for me. And I remember feeling that, once I'm a Mitra, then I'll be able to meditate really well and to have no problem getting up in the morning to meditate, because I'm not, I'll have to do it. I've declared it publicly, and then that sort of lasted like a week or something. And I was like, okay. So it wasn't the sort of be all and end all, but it did sort of allow me to feel more like myself. I felt more like myself. I could sort of practice precepts more and just sort of help out at the centre more. Of course, you saying you're a friend, and then you can sort of you can actually be a friend then by helping out at the centre more. So then, of course, I was on class teams after that, retreat teams, and then just felt I had more and more friends, and just felt more and more part of it. So it's, in a way, I never looked back in a way, but but it was a sort of, you have to see what happens for you.
Of course.
Yeah, it was interesting for me because coming up to being a Mitra, and for so long, actually, even being a Mitra, I was such a reluctant Buddhist. And it was interesting because it seemed like there was a part of me that had become hooked and was dragging the rest of me along, sort of kicking and screaming. I think other people sort of get this a little bit. It's like something sort of grabs you in the depths when you hear the Dharma, or when you step into the London Buddhist Centre, or you take part in the ritual of puja, for example. And the rest of you might not be up for it. It might be that the rest of you is very, very far behind, lagging far behind. So it was interesting for me because, for years, my first diving into the Dharma was very much a bit of me that kind of kept me coming each week and meditating each day, with the rest going, why is it we need to do this? Why do we, being so sort of bitter about it almost, So people might have that experience as well. They step into the centre and they're not, it's not like being smacked over the head by something. It'll be much more subtle. And actually there might be a part of us much deeper than we have sort of access to necessarily. And that keeps us coming along. And that was very much my experience of becoming a Mitra. It's like, part of me really into it. I was moved during the ceremony, but part of me really into it, and part of me just sort of lagging behind. And I wouldn't worry about that either. Some people will have that, and I wouldn't worry about it. Some part of them will probably feel it's the right thing to do. And I've been deeply grateful for all those years since that I have continued, because I think that part and the depths of me that did get so turned on initially when I saw the Dharma has now kind of has spread to the rest of me, and more and more of me is now sort of behind that life, which wasn't always the case actually.
Good to hear from you both, but personally, because it is a big decision, isn't it? To become Mitra. I certainly experienced this. It's a big decision.
Right.
Good. Just checking time. I've got a question for you, Amalio. This is a question in the context of conversations that have recently been held between our president, Subhuti, and then the chair, Siri Gupta, which are around Buddhism, race, and caste. And those conversations are on YouTube. If I'm referring to them and you've not seen them, you could go and look on our channel. And the question is, what role, if any, do you see yourselves as Mitra conveners playing in the developing diversity of the Sangha?
It's a good question. Thanks, Max. And I think it's an important one. I mean, I think for me, it goes back to that initial point we were making, that friendship transcends. True friendship transcends, spiritual friendship transcends, or at least has the potential to transcend. So I think that in reaching out to people, whatever their background, when they come to the centre with that hand of friendship, will bring people in. I think the Buddha's example of this was really, really good. The Buddha rejected caste within his own Sangha, and he said to people when they came, you leave your caste behind. And I think that's what we look to build here at the centre, is a place where people leave the aspects of themselves that to, as far as the Buddha's enlightened vision are superficial and mundane. Aspects like the colour of our skin, our gender, our nationality, our class. We look to leave those behind when we step into the centre. And that's not to say that, say, for example, that we ignore people's background, especially where it's had an effect on their lives, that we say, well, that actually, that is taken within a context where we are looking to transcend those divisions entirely. And we do that within the context of friendship. We do that in the context of the Buddha's vision of enlightenment, which of course goes way beyond race or gender or nation or class or whatever it might be. So I think that's what we do, that, and we look to develop a true diversity and a diversity of class backgrounds, race backgrounds, gender backgrounds, all of those, very, very important that they're represented within the Sangha, and that anybody who feels like that they want to get involved in the Buddha's vision, thread that path, feels welcome to do so. I think that's really important. I really good, so I always love telling this story, so I'll tell it again here now. When I was living in Gaza, I used to go out. We went out one day with these fishermen, Palestinian fishermen. When there used to be an imposed 3-kilometer radius as to how far Gaza fishermen could fish, and they'd look to sort of go out a little bit beyond that each time and see what they could. And we went out with them one day, and this fisherman was telling the story of how prior to Gaza being separated, put under embargo, that he used to travel into Israel each day, and he had this Israeli friend. They worked on a building site together, and when Gaza went under embargo, they couldn't see each other anymore, and they were desperately disappointed about this. So what these two guys arranged was to do Hajj together. Now, Hajj is when you go on pilgrimage to Mecca as a Muslim. And of course, for this Muslim Gaza fisherman to do that was fine, but very, very risky thing for this Israeli Jewish man to do, but the two of them did it. So the two of them met together this one final time, made Hajj together. There was an imam that gave the Jewish Israeli man, said, look, he's Muslim, and he went off to Mecca, and they did that. And I just thought, what a beautiful story of friendship transcending even the most bitter barriers, and it can do that. And I think that's our vision for diversity of the Sangha here at the LBC as well.
Thank you very much. Thanks for your answer. And one last question for you, Diana, or a penultimate question is, it might be might not be known, but part of your name is Men's Mitra Convenors. You talked a bit about how there's always been two for the women. And certainly when I first came along, it seemed peculiar to me that there was a men's wing of the order and the movement at large, and a women's wing of the order. And I wondered if you could just talk a bit about sort of why you think that is, and what your experience has been of being able to be in men's contexts. All three of us, and Seb live in a men's community upstairs, and two men's communities. So what is it? Why is it that True Partner does this? What's your experience?
Sure. Yeah. Well, yes. Well, for me personally, it was important to me to be part of a sangha that, as Anu said, was diverse, open to anyone, and that had equal ordination for men and women, which that was always Bante's vision, and Sangha Ratchasha, the founder's vision, and that is the case today. So that was really important, and at the same time, just the way we are. Well, for me, I wanted a context where I could be myself as much as I could be, and grow, and just sort of get to know myself more. And because I think once we know ourselves, then we can sort of grow beyond that and further. But we do need to know ourselves first. And I think for me, being around other men is a place where I have got to know myself the most, actually. And I didn't actually know at first, when I first came along, I didn't quite get that. You know what I mean? I think you do have to sort of really experience it and try it to understand it. But once I started a Mitra group, so a men's Mitra group, I sort of started to realise, the benefits of the single sex principle around sort of being with other men. In that I could just be more myself. I could also become friends with other men. I think I've always had male friends, which doesn't mean acquaintances, but it was never sort of on a sort of deeper emotional level. It used to be quite a superficial level. What football game have you seen? And, what car have you got? And what have you seen on TV last night? It used to be the main topic of conversation. And when you'd reserve your emotional life to either, I don't know, your girlfriend or your mum or other people. So being in a context of men where I could be myself and sort of really be myself, so share my emotional life, which of course isn't my life, really, it's all my life. It's not like a separate thing. Was like liberating. It was wonderful. It was like, for the first time, I didn't feel like I was a failure or something, or weak or something. It just felt like I could be me, and other people could be me, and you could see like a genuine friendship forming based on the shared practice and a shared sort of which I think is more difficult in a mixed setting. That's all, and I'm sure women find the same. It doesn't mean that I don't have female friends or friends in between, if you as well, but it just means it's just in a way practical. That's the context where we can most be ourselves, and therefore know ourselves, go beyond ourselves, and grow. And the context that's most supportive to friendship. It just works. I mean, it just works. So that's why we've had, our community's been around for over 20 years now. Our men's communities, and the women's communities have also been around at a similar time. Again, whereas mixed communities, for example, often don't last as long. You sort of mean that's not because they're bad or anything, but it's just a sort of, I'd say, practical reasons. And I really enjoyed living in the men's community, being on a men's Mitra team, and so we look to support that, to give men a chance to be friends with other men as much as we can.
That's right. I think it is something you just have to try at the end of the day and see how it goes. You put whatever doubts in your mind aside for a moment, momentarily, and try it.
Okay, brilliant. We're just about coming up to time. We were a little bit over, so thank you very, very much both. I wanted to say that I sort of, I think a few things that have come up again and again in our conversation is friendship and a vision, particularly Bante's vision. And I just thought I'd rejoice in how your own friendship, you know, sort of now the form mirrors the content, as it were. You know, your friendship mirrors well, it's very appropriate that you're such good friends and you're doing this role together, because you're sort of, as it were, modeling what you're inviting people to come and step into. And I think that's really, really inspiring. And I think you've both been very, very, very captivating, and the depth that I spoke about earlier of seeing you two develop over time has certainly come out in this interview. So thank you very much for your time. And I just thought I'd, just as a way to end, ask you if people are considering becoming a Mitra, or, you know, they want to get some more information, or, you know, want to get a bit more involved in this weird time of everything being online and COVID, sort of what as Mitra conveners would you recommend as next steps for people?
Yeah, so we've got a What is a Mitra morning. It's happening this Saturday, live on Zoom. And if you go onto our website, lbc.org.uk, there's a link there somewhere on the website to that Zoom. So you're very welcome to join. It's at 10 to 11:30 Saturday morning. And we'll just be exploring what is a Mitra, but hearing from Mitras, talk about the experience of being a Mitra. And then there'll be some groups, and then we'll answer questions as well. So there's that. Otherwise, you can always email myself, I'm Yodin, on the men's side, and on the women's side, Subhadramati or Mohamani. As I say, more details on the website.
Sure.
Anything else?
That's good.
And is it mixed on Saturday?
It's for men and women. Yeah, it's all 4 Mitra communities, including ourselves.
Yeah. Do reach out to us and get in touch as well if people want to. I think we're both happy to do that.
Yeah, definitely go for a walk or Victoria Park.
Yeah. Good.
Thank you very much,
Right,
Max.
Max.
Really great
Very
questions.
welcome.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah,
We
you're very
appreciate
welcome.
it.
And thank you all for tuning in. And thanks to Sad for doing the tech as well. Okay, good.
Great. It is